What makes a student do well in academics? There's work ethic, there's perseverance, there's practice, and shockingly enough, there's also furniture. This is Arvin Vohra, founder of Vohra Method, and when I first started this business, I did a lot of in-home tutoring. And I saw to my shock and amazement that one of the things that really changed how effective students were in anything academic, what got students into the hardest, most advanced AP classes, they would get fives on AP exams and do really, really well in the most difficult classes in the school. What allowed students to do that often had a lot to do, strangely enough, with furniture. So I'm going to show you the difference. Students who worked at tables at something like this is called a coffee table, and you see it's a little bit lower. It's at the same level as the couch seats over here. Students who worked at a coffee table like this very rarely got to the top academically. If they were getting A's, they were getting A's in easy classes, and if they were in AP classes, they were struggling. Whereas, strangely enough, students who worked at a table like this, at a desk like this, were the ones who were getting the higher grades and being in the harder classes and doing better on standardized tests, the SAT, AP tests, all that kind of stuff. And the reason that I mentioned standardized tests is you could just have an easy class and get an A in an easy class. It's not really the same as getting a 5 on an AP test or a 750 plus on an SAT subject test or 1500 or above on the SAT. And what I discovered was anyone who was getting a top 1% score on a standardized test was always using a desk, something like this. And so before too long, I was able to figure out why. And it's actually it's not that complicated. When you're sitting at a couch like this, and let's say you're writing something on this desk, you realize it's actually very uncomfortable to write at that angle. You have to reach over in this really awkward way. I actually couldn't find any pictures on the internet of somebody trying to do this because it would be just so physically awkward to even look at, let alone do. Now, here's what happens when you do that. Because it's harder to draw a diagram, your mind tries to avoid drawing diagrams. Because it's harder to write out steps, you try to do more steps in your head instead of writing them out. And both of those things are exactly what lead to careless mistakes. The reason that I got perfect scores on the GRE and GMAT, and if you don't know, the GRE and GMAT are like the SAT, just a bit harder, and finished. The reason I also finished both of them with well over an hour to spare is that I was writing down every single step. I was drawing every single diagram. So there was no way to make mistakes. I was making sure to use the techniques that were both fast and error-free. Now, if you're in a position if you're sitting at something like this and trying to write over here, your mind will subconsciously avoid diagrams. It'll be harder to do the diagrams. You'll try to do a half-done diagram, incomplete diagram, skip steps in math, etc. And so the more you do that, the more you're going to make mistakes. Now, at Vohra Method, if you get something wrong, you just redo it. And students who at Vohra Method have tried to work at a coffee table, or even worse, just sitting on the edge of a bed or just hanging out on a couch, when you do that, because it is harder to draw diagrams, to write out steps, the result is that you end up making more mistakes. And that means that you end up doing the problem instead of once, you do it 20 or 30 or 40 times. And a program that should only really take 4 months ends up taking 3.5 years. We don't want to have that happen. We don't want you to have to pay a lot extra. We don't want you to have to spend a lot of extra time. We want you to get through this process quickly, efficiently, and with great results. So at Vohra Method, we absolutely require that during every group class, you must be at an actual desk, something like this. A kitchen table is fine. A dining table is fine. A work desk is fine. Anything like that is fine. A couch is not fine. You're not going to be able to as easily draw on a couch as you would at a desk. The sitting at the side of the bed or inside your bed, that's also not okay during any Vohra Method group class. Lying on a sideways on a couch, sitting on a fainting couch or anything like that, none of that, sitting on the floor, none of that's allowed. You must absolutely, during every Vohra Method class, be sitting at an actual desk so that you can easily draw diagrams, easily write out your math steps, and use those techniques not only to do well in Vohra Method, but ultimately to do amazingly well on whatever standardized test or academic goal that you have.